Okay, everybody, we're about to be back from break. So you can see here are the standings heading into round 22. Tega and Saheed in the top spots right now. We expect that to change a couple more times over the next 3 games. Again, we are into the King of the Hill phase of the tournament where the first ranked player plays the second ranked player, third plays fourth, fifth plays sixth, and so on. 3 more rounds for these players to jockey their way into the top 2 spots. But for now, it is a reprise. We're going to see Tega Okiemute again, incredibly impressive throughout, taking on the second-ranked Saheed Jimoh. Tega going first. We get Saheed's flag correctly. We no longer have Femi representing the UK there. So I think we are all set. You might notice Tega's clock has been run a little behind schedule, I guess. He went to take a break that went a little bit too long, and the organizer permitted Saheed to run some seconds off of Tega's clock. But I cannot imagine. There's a couple. Let me get this board squared slightly. It's into my frame. And something else is wrong here. Is it the timers? No. Tega's camera? What is that? Oh, no, never mind. I think they just have something over the board. Okay, so there's like a piece of paper or something over the board, I think, that they're going to remove. I'm going to give the go-ahead to play. All right, here we go. So, Tega going first. As I was saying, he is really putting on quite a performance. He's playing really accurately, and he's playing really fast. So, losing a few seconds from his clock is just not going to matter to him. All right, I think... Is that a Q or an O? It looks like a Q to me. This is the most... I feel like I see, yeah, it's chi. So this is the most common opening play by a long shot and is the most important word in the game of Scrabble. And the reason for that, of course, as I've gotten into on my YouTube video on the Q, is simply that without that U, the Q is just a disaster of a tile. So Saheed flipping the board here. Can't tell which side is up anymore. Yeah, the word chi was kind of a revolution in the game when it came into the dictionary. I don't know, probably a decade and a half ago. The Q was even worse. If you think about how bad the Q is now, it was even worse before the introduction of this word. At least that's true in North American play. I don't know if that was always the case in the Collins dictionary that this word was always there. But in North American play, the addition of this word was as big of a change as you're likely to see. Just checking in on the racks. Hope all is good there. So these racks are left over from the previous game. And yeah, until we know what Saheed has, we can't really sweat along with him, but I'm sure we're going to get that fixed up shortly. So already Saheed taking more time than Tega. You can see his clock has now crossed into the 23-minute zone. So Tega, it took all of one turn for him to get a slight advantage. Oh, wow, okay. Oh, boy. This looks like it's going to be Powerer, which is a very plausible word, but it happens to not be a word. I'm so curious. Tega challenges. Man, that's impressive. So there is a valid word in here, and that word, well, a valid word in these letters with that blank as an E would be repower. That doesn't actually fit on the board anywhere. The words that do fit on the board here are prowler. You could play prowler. You could play pre-warn. Couple other things available. Pre-warn actually scores the most here, making the N the hook to chi, but a really impressive challenge for Tega. As you can see, his first rack there. And off comes this play. So powerer. So it's going to be very difficult for Tega to block all of those options. I think it's definitely correct for him. Well, boy, that's okay. I have to say, maybe he should have taken a little time to think about this, because, sorry for not flipping the board there for you guys, but his play of Aliener does not perform that well against Saheed's rack. I think this should have been, hold on, let me get this squared away here. So Tega moves up to 93-0, pitching a shutout so far. But the reason why I say that is that I might have taken a little time to think about the fact that my opponent has Prowler blank. You've set up a place for your opponent now to play Prowlers for 98. Maybe there were other options on Tega's previous turn for the positioning of Aliener that would have actually worked out better. So in a vacuum, this play by Tega of Aliener is clearly correct, but given that he knows all of the tiles of his opponent, I don't know. What do we think, right? Like, well, what happens after the, I guess it doesn't matter too much, because if you, the only other positioning you can even play Aliener is on top here. You can only play here, and if you do that, you're putting an E in the triple lane, in the double lane. So hold on, let me actually go through this and try to figure this out. So if you play Aliener here, oh, sorry, hold on. We're about to see a play. Let's see what that is. Oh, man. That's really surprising to see Prowlers be missed by Saheed here. Given that he has Prowler blank, right, you would be thinking about Prowler, certainly with the L on the board there. Instead, he just plays War. But anyway, just to finish this thought, if you play Aliener, you're giving up air powers to the triple and pre-rote as a double-double. All right, very, very quickly, Tega plays Joy. That looks like a really solid play from that rack. So anyway, maybe it actually works out better, but I think in actual practice, air power and pre-rote are much more difficult bingos to find than Prowler. However, Saheed did miss Prowler, so Tega's choice, while I had initially thought that maybe it was a slight mistake, it did not harm him at all. So he worked out all the better for it. So play of Joy seems quite reasonable for him. Don't love to keep the BP combination on his rack, but he'll do it here to get the J and Y off instead. So, all right, sorry, hold on. Let's get the scores here. So Saheed continues on with this blank. And now you can see his rack has really deteriorated quite a bit. He's going to play his best play of Grid here. Grid for 26, leaving LP blank. This makes perfect sense. that being said, just because this is the best play, it's a huge missed opportunity for him on his previous turn to play War instead of Prowlers for 98, which I think he definitely should see. I think that is into the realm of, if you have Prowler blank, you should be seeing Prowlers. Sorry, let's flip this. So, wow. Interesting choice here. Hold on. I gotta get back into the interesting play. Pierce for 34, holding the B. So I think a much more reasonable play would be to play B cap here. This is a play that gets rid of all 3 of your 3-point tiles in one. Sorry. And Pierce, of course, making a little bit of this is an archaic form of the regular word pierce. It just makes a really nice little spot to dump a few hooks here. So maybe a slight inaccuracy here from Tega. That's like incredibly rare so far. We haven't seen many plays like that, as Rem is the response, making idem. That's a nice hook. But this looks like, hold on. Did he have anything available there? No. Rem is okay. I guess why not Prem? He's got this Rem play. He could have popped his P on there, and instead of leaving 3 consonants with his blank, he could have left only 2. So a couple imprecisions so far in this game. I would say certainly mostly by Saheed. Pierce versus B cap is kind of a hair-splitting play, but the miss of Prowler and the play of Powerer are 2 pretty big errors that are, as of right now, certainly hurting Saheed on the scoreboard. Yesterday we had some Saheed fans in the chat. Hopefully, if you're still here today watching, he still has a chance to redeem himself and get back on the right track with some of these plays. Sometimes you make an early mistake and it can cloud the entire rest of the game. Other times you have a chance to do something great later in the game, and if you just shake off that first mistake, you'll still put yourself in a position to do that. So this is a tricky rack for Tega. He's actually taking a little bit of time to think about this. You can see the BV combination of consonants is not ideal. Those 2 tiles don't mesh well together. And then you've got some vowel issues too, with a U and multiple A's. The U and the V also do not mesh well at all. Additionally, ideally, Tega would love to find a play from this R to the triple, but it really doesn't look like he has any that are that helpful. His best choices there are something like Rabat or Rebut, and those plays leave the V and weird combinations of vowels. So Evil Budgie says, looking at the standings, it does seem to go down to 15-9 for second around half the time. Yeah, that's there's going to be quite a logjam at the top here for sure. All right, the play is Juve in the top of the board. This makes sense. There aren't that many other positionings for this word that are completely safe. Juve there does expose the U. It would be kind of scary, but the worst case scenario of putting the U there is probably that your opponent has a Q that they couldn't play normally, and you're giving them a huge place to play it, but that's not possible here. The Q is on the board, so it's not quite so bad. It is going to give Saheed a pretty nice place to dump some of his high-scoring letters if he's able to find a play there. But I don't really quibble too much with this play from Tega's perspective. It's not that likely that your opponent is going to crush you with something like the Z. The J, I should also add, would be a pretty damaging play to put there. Lots of good J plays Sorry, let me get this right. J would go here, but that's also on the board. So really the Z is the biggest threat. Yes, pointing out, Tokolo's 1 points out phenols. That certainly would be very helpful to see here. Instead, the play is going to be push, which that scores decently well. 36 points. You could rearrange those letters and play hups instead if you wanted to for 3 more points. That's not the biggest bingo miss ever, but it's still pretty bad, as you could, as you could see, phenols and joys would score a pretty significant number of points to where that would clearly be superior. So this would have been 86. Hold on, Tega is playing something. He plays Yao. So that's interesting. I mean, this is an aggressive play. Somebody yesterday was telling us a little bit about Tega's style as a player, and mentioning that he's not afraid to play aggressively. He's not afraid to open the board and take his chances, which is definitely a big contrast in style to a lot of the other players that we've seen competing here. So Yao makes a fair bit of sense because the Y goes in this nice triple letter score spot. Definitely a few other choices here, like Rybat would have been intriguing for 42. That being said, that play leaves a W, whereas Yao does not. So I do worry a little bit about Yao just because it takes so many hooks. Yao is a play that takes an E, takes an L. I mean, it's going to make plays here very, very easy. So let's see what... Oh, wow. Okay, an appropriate word. So Yao the play for Tega, and at last a bingo here with this rack of Lexicon, and that is the highest scoring bingo here. And maybe... All right, so back over to Tega. Perhaps the safest play here on Saheed's part would have been Flexion for 88. Even that is scary because it takes a big S hook, right? So there's still a lot of bad stuff that can happen. Lexicon is probably not that much more dangerous on balance. So, all right, Saheed is going to find his way back into the game here, but Tega will have first dibs on, not sure what's happening. Hopefully we'll still be able to see the board and the timers. So, no bingo. Tega was hoping that one of those open tiles of Lexicon was an E because he would be able to play Bainites. Uncommon Nigerian says, will this lingering blank be problematic for Saheed? Yeah, it definitely was for a while. Let me see here. We got the board cams moved slightly. Okay, so Bainin is the play. That's a nice play through the N. The two I's both coming off the rack on this same play. So that's nice. You're not leaving even a single I in case you draw another one. It's worth thinking about maybe if just playing something like WAB maybe on that turn. Sorry, I got to go back into the Bainin turn. WAB is kind of compelling. It scores quite well. However, it leaves the Lexicon N completely open. And it keeps two I's. So you're getting a few extra points, but maybe the cost of getting those points is too much. So the play of Bainin makes some sense to me. Another idea on that turn that looks quite nice if you're willing to leave the N completely open is just Bivia in the top corner of the board. That leaves NST which is very good. And keep in mind, again, all of your S-containing leaves are extra powerful here because of this spot. If you're able to draw a bingo with an S at the end, which you can see Tega has done. Tega has bingos here that are ready to go down with joys. Plenty of them. This rack is one of the most high probability tiles. We were having a discussion in the chat before about studying words. We had a buddy of mine, Zando Toaster, mentioning that he's just downloaded Ziziva and started to study words for the first time, which is awesome. And these sets of tiles, the ones that Tega has here, are definitely going to give you the most bang for your buck in the early going. Learning words that have these low point tiles, of which there are many in the set of Scrabble tiles, and for good reason. More words have those letters in them. But they're also very challenging to learn. There are a lot of anagrams in them. So really learning the full set of words, right? Like if we do anagram and tails, look at that. There's so many of them. There's 9. All right, we see hour is the play. I don't know about that one because it leaves 3 vowels and doesn't score particularly well. There has to have been a way to avoid that circumstance. But either way, this is going to be bad news now, as we're very likely to see something come down here. It looks like the only bingo spots for Tega are with joys here in this top corner. So something like in tails or 10 nails. In a vacuum, looking at these moves, you would definitely prefer to play 10 nails. And the reason for that is this E allows really high scoring consonants to play both here or here, and it's much more possible to get a word that spans both triples than it is through this T, which isn't quite as good of a letter. But look at Saheed's rack. Oh man, is he getting a possible chance? The timing of this is incredible. So to Saheed's rack of EAU, he's drawn DBM blank, just what he needed. Absolutely amazing draw by him. And it doesn't look like he has a big triple 9-timer, as they say, because you multiply the score of the word by 9 if you can hit both of these triples in one go. So with that blank, without question, Saheed is going to be looking through this T for some time. He's going to be trying to find a play like this because after Tega's bingo of 10 nails, he is now back up by about 100. So tantalizingly close. Worth noting that the highest, there actually is no playable bingo through the T for Saheed here. Let's just see. So only 2 words are drumbeat and umbrated, and the T on the board is not in the right position for either of those 2 to play. Worth noting, if we just go back in time here, and if we pretend instead that these little nuances, right, entailed versus 10 nails, had Tega played entails instead, it would be a much bigger response possible for Saheed. He would have to see it and know it, but be mauled for 95 points would be available through this E. Instead, 10 nails is the word that was played, and there isn't going to be anything near 95 points here. The highest scoring play, he's playing something. Okay, this looks like it's going to be unbeamed, and this is going to come off the board as well. Almost certainly. There's no way Tega is letting this stay. I can't imagine it. And Tega is for somebody that plays so fast. I guess it doesn't really matter that it seems like sometimes he doesn't manage his clock correctly. Somebody needs to give him a lesson of how to neutralize the clock. We are using a phone clock, so it might be different. This might be the first time that some of these players have ever used a phone as their timer in a game. So Tega giving up 30 seconds or so on his clock that he doesn't have to, but either way, this is going to be a second phony try. It's a reasonable try, I suppose, but it's not a word, and it's going to give Tega another chance to solidify his lead because he's going to play Tetanoid through that same E that Saheed just tried to use. And that is going to be pretty much a final blow in this game. As you can see, the score is going to be 374 to 215. So this is going to be a big, big swing. Plenty of opportunities here for Saheed, but two phonies in the game is going to hurt. Zando says, learning the words is pretty much exactly as hard as I expected it to be, but it's a lot more fun than I thought it would be. Yeah, so I have, as I often say, when I think about learning words for Scrabble, I feel like it scratches the same itch. I've said this before. When I was young, I liked to collect baseball cards, and then eventually I collected Magic the Gathering cards and basketball cards and Star Wars cards and all that sort of thing. I like collecting stuff. And I feel like learning Scrabble words, as we see a nice play by Saheed. This is his best play. Dumb for 44 points here. Well spotted, but it's going to be too little too late here. He's down by so much. I feel like learning words in Scrabble scratches that exact same itch as collecting stuff does. You're basically collecting words the same way you would collect Magic the Gathering cards. And just like in Magic the Gathering, every word you learn gives you an opportunity to play. It's like another card almost that has different abilities, different attributes, lets you deploy different letters in different ways, right? Some cards are completely overpowered and get played every game, and some are more for fun, that maybe every so often you'll get a game scenario where you can play that card or that word, right? So I really feel like, for me, I've always been someone that needs to be collecting something, and ever since I started playing Scrabble, I haven't needed to collect anything else because I'm collecting words in my brain and getting to play this great game with them. So that's always how I've thought about it. So Tega with a well over 100-point lead here. Hold on. Why are the... I feel like I'm just now seeing that the scores are not, like, level. Is that true? Yeah. One of my player scores is in the wrong spot. All right, I'll fix that another time. It's like a pixel off. It's driving me nuts. Couple pixels off. Maybe that's just because of the numbers. Oh, wow, canals. Okay, so the play canals through the N of 10 nails. Interesting, just curious about that play, just because canals going down here scores 30-ish points. At the same time, if Tega knows it, there is an even more obscure word of fanals is also a word. Additionally, I just want to point out for Tega that there is an amazing play of aftosa parallel to Bainin with that rack, which is really nice. Probably the most reasonable play that could be found here is something like Flota, leaving the S behind. Canals is probably being done for a very specific reason of blocking off this A and maybe making it more difficult to play overlapping plays here. It definitely does more to prevent Saheed from bingoing again. So that's likely the rationale behind canals, right? Like putting the S on it in particular is a clear sign that you by placing this S here, you're making it impossible for a 7-letter word to hook dal here. So this is clearly being done with defense in mind to block off some stuff and offer nothing in return. And Tega is going to go up by a pretty significant margin here. So there are some bingos available here for Saheed. They're not going to be particularly damaging if he finds them. So on this board, and Tokelos has spotted them both. That's it. Fatigued and Driftage. That's the only two plays in this scenario that use all 7 of the tiles on Saheed's rack. But you can see, even with another 62 points after bingoing, both of those plays would score 62. That's not going to be enough here. I think he's just checking the number of tiles in the bag. The answer to that question is there are 8 tiles in the bag. I need to come up with a better way of getting the tracking. Maybe I'll just sort of do it in the chat like this. Unseen to Saheed. This might be the best way I can do it. This is not something that's going to work. This method will not work if we get broadcasts like what chess has, for example, of thousands and thousands of viewers. Because then the chat's going to be scrolling too quickly. There's going to need to be some kind of an on-screen element with that. But okay, so play of Todd here for 37. That's a lot of points. However, it leaves FG blank, which is a challenging combination to bingo with. And you could easily see, I could actually easily see now, because unseen to Tega is this. Really ugly tiles, right? So yeah, the blank is there, but it's going to be paired with some pretty gross letters. So it's very possible that Saheed will not be able to use this blank that he's had on the rack since unbeamed. He's had it for several turns now. And his first blank, it's actually pretty amazing. Saheed has only had 1 turn in this game where he didn't have a blank on his rack. And that's actually kind of interesting because he drew a blank to start the game when he played Powerer. That was a phony that got challenged off. And he was stuck with it a while because he wasn't able to find a bingo. And it's an instructive situation because we often talk about the blank as being the best tile in the game of Scrabble. And it is in terms of its value to the player, but it does have that kind of challenge to it where if you happen to not be able to find the bingos available to you in certain situations, it can sort of, you're going to hold on to it to try to bingo later, and it's going to restrict your options on those turns. It's going to basically be, if you can't find a way to bingo with it, and you know you have to save it for next turn, you're basically working with only 6 tiles instead of 7. Okay, so Tef is played here. I know we lost our cams briefly. Tef looks like a very good play from Tega's standpoint because there were 4 tiles in the bag. He plays Tef to avoid emptying the bag. If he were to empty the bag of all of its tiles, a bingo by Saheed would simply end the game. Instead, by playing only 3 tiles, Tega has ensured that even in the event of a bingo, he'll get one more turn to run his score up even higher. And Saheed is just going to play Zonk. I think he's totally correct to do this. It scores 50 points. That's not too much less than a bingo. And there's going to be no way for him with these ugly tiles and only one more tile in the bag. There's going to be no way for him to realistically actually get a bingo. And man, to add insult to injury, you can see that to his leave of EUTS, Tega has drawn VIO, and in this particular instance, it allows him to bingo out without Vise at the base of the board to create a final score of 522 to 347. And Saheed never gets to play that second blank. Oh, tragic. Let me see if I can get the player cam back here and see the players sort of reacting to the game finishing. Trying to refresh it. So there we go. We got it back. So that's just a brutal loss for Saheed in many ways. Two phonies. Never got to play that second blank. And Tega even out bingoing against him to really tank his spread even further. So again, if we look at the standings here, I'll put them up in the lower corner. You can see that Tega doesn't need that extra spread. He's doing great. He's 14-7 plus 773 going into this game. But Saheed really does need it because you can see when he drops to 14-8 and some of the players at 13, well, actually, it's starting to stratify a little bit. But really, I guess only Okiemute can overtake him now, but there are other players waiting in the wings that have much higher spread than Saheed is going to. So you can see Wellington appears to have won his last game. Caro maybe as well. 13-9. I think those guys have moved up. Emmanuel's moved down. Charles Takumenson is back in the top group. Boy, he must be on a bit of a hot streak, because I know he started slowly, despite an epic game that he played on stream in day one. So either way, this is another win for Tega as he gets closer and closer to clinching one of the two finalist spots. Okiemute 504, Femi 369. So Femi not with the start that he needed today. Femi starting the day in first place. Looks like he has lost his first two games of the day to drop back down into the pack, whereas Tega has won both of his first two. So we shall see. It's possible, I suppose, that we're going to get a rematch of these two players because I don't know who is set to pass Saheed. Saheed's going to drop to 14-8, but he's not going to fall below Dennis. And yeah, it's very possible that in our next round, we're going to see a rematch between these two players. Yeah, no point in Saheed. Oh, Okiemute is 14-8. Hold on. Do I need to refresh? Okay, so Okiemute, if Okiemute, right, his result's not in. Okay, so Okiemute is going to pass Saheed. So I think, sorry about that. You guys are right. So I think we will see a matchup between Tega Okiemute and Okiemute Aloro in the next round. All right, looks like we got our cameras. Everything is up. I do think we'll take another short break before round 23 begins. We'll figure out who's going first. We'll reset everything. But yeah, it's getting to be crunch time now. Crunch time. Tega is about to punch his ticket. I think he is really on the cusp. He's about to move up to 15-7. One more win for him should do it. The only question is who will join him, or will he have a brutal pair of losses in the final games that opened up another finalist spot to some of these other people in the top group. We'll have to see. It's very exciting. So we'll take a little break and come back again with round 23 from the MGI Scrabble Grand Slam 2022.